insulated metal, blah, 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 blah. If I looked at the search term like women's pink rubber coated insulated water bottle, like that's my exact product. Now, the more specific you get to the product, the more specific the search is, the lower your search volume is going to be. So what we always look to do on product launches is like we try and find the intersection between good search volume and good to us is like maybe even a couple thousand, depending on the budget, that also have really good relevancy to the product. Because what you're trying to do is you want to get in front of your exact shoppers. So example would be insulated water bottle is going to be really expensive and not super specific to my product. Like it's kind of specific, but not really specific. I'm trying to say like, okay, where can I start getting super specific to my product, but it's going to have enough search volume that I can get the sales volume that I need. So I would focus more on that versus than I would looking at only search volume. A bit of a technical answer here is we don't quote move them, meaning we're not going to pause the existing keywords. We're simply going to launch them in another match type. Again, make sure to keep the bids lower. Amazon actually, if you read their recommendations, they recommend keeping bids lower on broad and phrase match, even lower than the exact match. When we would launch those is honestly really dependent performance of the account and availability of the budget. So if you launch a keyword in exact phrase and broad, so you have 50 keywords, right? And you launch them in exact phrase and broad, you technically have, 150 keywords that you've launched. And the potential of broad and phrase to spend could be quite high. So again, you just want to make sure it makes sense. It seems super simplistic, but if you are in a phase where you're struggling to control total ACoS and ACoS, to fix those two numbers, it really means that you have to lower down your ad spend with ideally little to no impact of the total sales or the ad sales in the case of ACoS. If you introduce a whole, again, those 50 keywords in exact phrase and broad, and those you probably need to test and optimize the bids, etc., you're introducing a lot of additional ad spend into the account. So you do want to be aware of that and be careful with that. So that's kind of a benchmark that we use. But overall, I would say, I don't know if I would have like a certain time frame or a frame which I would hold back on. It really is dependent on the performance of the account. Another good question, which best bid strategy for phrase and exacts when you move? So again, we don't really move them. We would simply launch them in addition. We like to separate them by campaign as well. I think it gives us a little bit more control over, say, budgets for things. Now, as far as the bidding strategy, we're a super huge fan of using mainly dynamic down only. If it is a keyword that we want to ensure that we get impressions for, so for our launch keywords, for our main keywords, for anything we're trying to be aggressive with, we prefer a fixed bidding strategy. It's still going to be the same. It's still going to be pick highly relevant keywords. One other tip is pick keywords that fit within the budget of the account that you're launching. So for instance, if I have a couple $100 a day budget versus $50 a day budget, those launches are actually going to look a little bit different because I can't afford that many clicks on a $50 a day budget. Or if I had, a couple $100 or $1,000, I have a lot more room for clicks. So actually, you want budgets to play into your launch strategy. The other thing that you want to keep in mind, do not expect profitability on launch. This is a huge one. There's a lot of people that try and pull back and knee-jerk for profitability right out of the gate. That is not going to happen. The reason why it's not going to happen, and I'll tell you the numbers behind the numbers, is that ACoS is just going to be high on your product launches, and that is a function of two things. One, the aggressive cost per click you have to set to be able to get visibility in the beginning, and two, how low your product conversion rate is going to be, especially if you're launching without reviews. Those two things, once you start to be able to bring your cost per clicks down because you're getting momentum or you're optimizing your bids, and then two, once your product conversion rate starts to increase because you're getting those reviews, maybe you're optimizing your listing a little bit more because you've learned more about your target market, that is going to help bring down your target ACoS. So those things, again, conversion rates is going to be low, high cost per click. That's actually like the nuts and bolts of why your ads are not profitable, and it's almost unreasonable to expect profitability in the beginning. And that's actually why, if you've ever had a product where you're like, no matter what I do, I cannot seem to bring the ACoS down, I'm struggling here, it's a function of that your conversion rate is remaining low and it's not improving, and your cost per clicks are remaining high and you're not able to improve them due to the market or something else. So again, I would still say pick highly relevant keywords, Also, make sure that whatever keywords that you have fits within your budget. Launch them. Aggressive, sponsored products, exact match, potentially sponsored brand video, exact match if you have the creative. Double down on that for a couple weeks and then start expanding. Awesome. Well, hello, and welcome back to another Ask Junglr segment. This is where I join you guys every single Thursday for 1 full hour, and we talk shop. We talk Amazon advertising tips, tricks, scenarios, how to navigate it. Looks like we've already got some questions popping up in the chat. So with that, I want to share the format from this, and which is going to be you show up here, you ask your Amazon advertising question into the chat, no matter where you are watching, streaming, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, try and go live on all the social channels so we can reach you on whatever platform you prefer to listen to. Other things that you might find interesting is all of these segments are actually published later on in a podcast, believe it or not. So for those of you who enjoy watching, don't know why that happened. For those of you who enjoy watching or listening to podcasts, if you find that a little bit easier, you can go to junglr.com/live and you can see we have quite a few of these. We also have some guests that have joined us on previous segments. A lot of good information here. So of course, you can watch or listen to this on whatever streaming platform you find easiest. So Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of the above. All right, let's get into it. Awesome. And we have Daisy's here helping me source some questions that have been answered in my comment section. So we'll get to those as well. Cool. And I think I'm going to dive right into it, except for one other thing I wanted to share with you all is at 3 p.m., which is going to be, a couple hours after this segment stops going live, I'm actually going to be joining Orange Click on their Seller Fest, which that is a free live session. So definitely recommend you check it out. There's a lot of amazing speakers as well. I'm really excited that I get to be a part of that. So I'm going to drop that link in the comments as well for anyone who would like to join that. I'm going to be talking all about bulk files. And if you are listening in on LinkedIn and you are unable to get that link, well, let me know. LinkedIn is a little bit weird on not letting me put anything in the comments there, unfortunately. Cool. All right, so you can use the chat to ask your Amazon ad questions. And with that, let's dive right into it because we got some good ones. Joseph has a really good question here. So he was asking, love that interview with Stephen Knock. So that is actually live on our YouTube channel right now, Mastering Amazon Bid Management. Stephen and I had a really good discussion because Stephen is a very loud advocate of something called the revenue per click bid adjustment model. If you listen to Destiny with Sean, she will talk about the revenue per click model. It's basically saying, given my conversion rates, given my price point, what would my average cost per click need to be to hit my target A cost? That can be calculated very, very easily using a revenue per click model. So Joseph, glad you liked the interview. I really appreciate that. You're asking if you wanted to test the revenue per click model, how would I go about it in a super large account? Does it work best if I have items with predictable conversion rate or items with many orders? Joseph, I would say yes. It definitely works better if you have a more sort of like standardized or like steady conversion rates for the products. Because where you're going to run into issues is if you have conversion rates that are fluctuating, like one week it's going to tell you like, oh, this is great, and the other week it's maybe not going to be so great. Pro tips that we found, and if you are trying to make adjustments to products that have like fluctuating conversion rates, is to look over longer date ranges. Can be really helpful to sort of smooth out those peaks and valleys. But Joseph, I would say your instincts are correct. If you're going to test it, I would test it with one product. In addition to looking at products that are, say, performing well, have like really steady performance, I would also recommend testing it on a product that you have a really good feel for, meaning like you know which what type of bids work, you have a really good understanding of, you know, where you tend to rank really well for the product, just so you can kind of QA the bids that revenue per click model is going to spit out. And then you have a much better handle on, hey, does this actually make sense given my understanding of this product's performance? And you'll start making much better decisions if you have a good handle on what you know already works. It can be really helpful to, you know, sort of allow your understanding to bridge that gap between what the revenue per click model is saying versus, you know, kind of what you know works best. Again, I would recommend checking that out because I'm not fully crossed over the fence of only using the revenue per click model to calculate bids. I completely understand Steven's arguments for it, and I agree with his premise. It's just we don't use it all the time in our agency, and we go through like a really in-depth discussion of why, what we've seen when it comes to bid adjustments, how you should maybe be tweaking bid adjustments based on like different performance things. So regardless if you want to use the revenue per click model or not, I think you'll find that super valuable. Another great question coming in we are in a launching phase for a product and our ads are not getting clicks with low impressions. Since the bids are so high, $3 bids, we want to offer suggested bids. We don't want to offer suggested bids to get the click. How can we get the click? Okay, there's two issues here. One is that you're not getting impressions. That's the bid. So that's a problem of you're not bidding high enough in the auction. Amazon's not going to serve you up because they're like, hey, somebody else is going to pay me more to show up here. So sorry, not sorry. You can't win that ad auction. You're not eligible for the impression. That's the first problem. But the second problem of not getting clicks is not actually an issue with the bid. It's an issue of when a shopper comes across your ad, your product is not enticing. And so in that case, there's a couple things that you want to think about. I would take a look, and now I know you don't have many clicks, so you probably don't have a lot of data on this, but one thing that will tell you if your offer is appealing to shoppers or not is your click-through rates. Your click-through rates are your clicks divided by your impressions, and a good click-through rate on Amazon, like a really good click-through rate, is going to be 1% or above. Now, typically speaking, you have those type of click-through rates when you're high up in search on your main keywords or like video ads or something that's really visually appealing. If you are like between a 1 and a 0.5%, then, you know, that's pretty decent and good. Once you start getting below a 0.5%, it's not a bad click-through rate. If you get to, say, a 0.3 is kind of iffy, but if you are showing up on specific keywords that are relevant to your products and you only have a 0.3, 0.2 or below, if it's like a 0.15%, that's not a great click-through rate. So that's either a problem with one of two things. Either you have a problem with your offer being your main image, the price point, how many reviews you have. Now, I know when you're in a launch phase and this is really, really difficult, right? But are you putting your best foot forward in terms of how you're showcasing the products? Or two, you're not really showing up in the places where your product is going to appeal to shoppers, i.e. your keywords. So what I would recommend doing is heavily vetting what keywords you're going after. How specific are they to your product? And then also, this is not going to be an answer that you're probably happy to hear, but in some ways, This is just a function of the issues that we run into when we launch products. So here's what I would recommend you do. I would recommend, if this is your product, then I would look at, if you're brand registered, you can look at the brand metrics inside of the ad console to get an idea of where your conversion rates and how you appeal to shoppers in your particular category versus the category averages. If you have data in Search Query Performance Report, it's a new product, you may or may not. And then what I would do is I would look heavily at the keywords, and your goal right now is to find where do I have keywords that I can at least get a good click-through rate on, and where do I have keywords that are not going to be as expensive for me. Now, what this is going to do is this is going to mean that you probably can't go after the main keywords in your space right now. If you want to be profitable on launch, you're not going to be able to aggressively target your main keywords, which is a fact, right? You have to learn how to play the game the way that makes sense for your business at this point, or your client's business. And so in that case, I would look at long tail keywords. I would look at hyper specific keywords. You basically want to find the intersection between where can I get decent traffic, where can I get people to actually click on my ads, and then where can I start to make those conversions. And then once you start to make those conversions back, then you can take those sales and roll it back into more aggressive advertising. And ideally, the flywheel spins in a positive direction. But I will say, I would test that. And the other thing that you can look into is, depending on what bidding strategy you have, you might also choose a fixed bidding strategy. Oftentimes, if your goal is impressions, fixed bidding strategy will get you more impressions. All right, Daisy has a good question. So this is from one of our commenters on my LinkedIn. It said, I had a good amount of sales on Prime Day during last month, but after that, I also get a huge hit on my profits. Ad spend remains the same, but conversion rates drop similarly to sales. Yes. So the problem with, actually, I have a presentation that I just, all right, let me give you a couple places to go for information on this, okay? One of them is actually going to be a live that I did just yesterday on our, so it's this one, Crush Q4. There's a lot of strategies. So a lot of people sharing good information, not just me. So that would be a good one to listen to. But so it's underneath, it's on our YouTube channel underneath the live section. So Crush Q4 Amazon sales strategies. I shared a strategy on how to adjust your advertising for peak shopper times, which is going to include Q4, Prime Day, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, all of the above, like those peak sales times. But what I also share is a strategy, like very tactical strategy on how we actually adjust ads post peak shopper times. So Prime Day, Q4, yes. What happened is that conversion rates are down right now. They started to equalize. They're pretty much equalized in most of our accounts, but we anticipate the drop. And what we do is we adjust our ads for that. Because what's going to happen if you're not careful, and I can't tell you how many brands I consult in January, they're like, my Q4 was like amazing, and all of a sudden my metrics are trash. I have no profitability, no sales, everything's in a death spiral. And I take a look at their account and I'm like, you're still optimizing like you're in Q4. Your bids, your budgets, your strategies are still set like you're in peak Q4. And that is a recipe for wasted ad spend and zero profits. And so what you want to do is be adjusting for post Prime Day, and just recognize in some ways you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, meaning you can't make the market conversion rates go up. So you have to, in a lot of ways, adjust for that. Yeah, Joseph was saying, I second that. We found it very hard these days with getting clicks on new launches. Yeah, I've talked to my ad managers. We've had internal discussions on this. I've also talked to a lot of other friends in the space who have really good agencies and really good teams. And that's pretty much been our consensus across the board, is that It takes a lot longer these days, and sometimes you have to push your bids a lot higher than you would initially be comfortable with, because for whatever reason, we're just struggling to get impressions right out of the gate these days, which has kind of been a shift. It used to be that you could like put a good keyword up, as long as you threw the bid up high, you would get crazy amounts of impressions. Now, I mean, kind of the good news about that is like, it's a little, I'm not saying it doesn't still happen, but it's a little bit less, where you will like put up something and like spend thousands of dollars a day within the first like 12 hours because you didn't realize something happened, right? That can happen, but we are noticing that like, to get the train out of the station and to get things moving, it does take longer than it used to. And again, tip on that is, if your goal is impressions, test fixed bidding strategy. Now, this may increase how much spend you have. You might not get as good of a conversion rate as you would with, say, dynamic bids down only. However, it does help with increasing impressions, is what we found. So I would test that. Just the yay box follows. I'm drowning in content. Yes, lots of content being put out. So if any of you has any ideas for content or things that you would find super helpful, I am always down to create more content. I try and make everything I do very, very useful to the audience. So if you got an idea, feel free to hit me up on whatever social platform. I'm always down to hear it. All right, Daisy pushing in some more comments. Awesome. I'm running other campaigns with specific products. Should I exclude these products from the catch-all campaign so they don't compete with each other? That's a really good question. And so for context, what a catch-all campaign is essentially an auto campaign. You can kind of call it in some ways like a dump campaign. It's one of those things, you can't really scale it. It goes against all good conventional practices when it comes to setting up of campaigns, but it freaking works. It's almost like printing money, but you really do have to know how to control it. And so I'm trying to find the video that I did that specifically referenced that. Actually, I'm gonna pull it up for you. It's this one, Catch-All Auto, the campaign that prints money and how not to screw it up. So I'm gonna copy this. I'm gonna drop it in the chat if anyone wants to go through and watch that. I think you'll find it very beneficial. But the answer to this question is, if you're running other campaigns with specific products, I would include those in the catch-all campaign. They're not going to compete against each other. You're simply going to get new additional traffic for them. So your products shouldn't compete across multiple campaigns as much as you might sometimes hear that from an Amazon ad rep. I've heard some really interesting information. Information like you only ever want to have a single campaign for a product, and if you have multiple campaigns, you're competing against each other. That's complete bull crap. All right, Ellen. Hi. All right, part 1 of 2 questions. Have you always said to use old campaigns whenever possible? What happens if they haven't been maintained in a long time, 6 to 12 months, and there isn't anything recent? Should you use the old campaigns or just start again? That's a really, really good question, Ellen. I appreciate you showing up and asking. I would say it depends on the performance of the old campaigns. If the old campaigns are performing well, use them. Now, where we would be okay with like completely restarting a new structure is if we come into an account and we're like, we got some good old stuff in here, but none of it's working. None of it's working. You clean up all that stuff. You can get rid of it, start new things. If it's working, I would say maintain and just use them, and then simply add additional campaigns where you notice that there's, sort of like holes in the account or certain campaigns that aren't running. I actually did a really interesting podcast, recorded it yesterday, so I think it's going to be out. I was told like September, October. We were actually talking about this though, and one of the questions that was asked is like, hey, what's the best campaign structure to put up? And I'm like, all right, I'm going to tell you what the best campaign structure is, and then I'm going to tell you why sometimes it doesn't matter. And so I went on to explain that like, hey, good, clean campaign structure is about being able to control where your ad spend is going to, what products, what placements, what targets, all of that stuff, right? What budget I'm putting on these things. the better your campaign structure is, the more control you will have over that. Which the more control you have over that, the more options you have to sort of tweak what each individual product is doing in terms of performance. So you have a lot more levers to do. But I do want to say this. Good campaign structure doesn't always necessarily mean that that's the best for performance. So going back to like that catch-all auto strategy or some of these old campaigns, like you'll go in there and be like, this thing is performing so well, it drives me crazy. I wish I could change this because I don't have a lot of control here. I feel like this needs adjusting. However, it just simply works, right? It's frustrating, but a lot of times, like performance on old stuff, it just works, right? So I'm a big fan. If it ain't broke, don't tweak it, but don't try and like completely burn it down and start over. Would be my answer. But and by the way, if I say anything or anyone has any specific questions or follow-up questions on anything, feel free to drop those in the comments as well. Yes, DZ. This is one of our YouTube comments. They were asking about a deep dive on bulk video formulas. They were saying that there's some in the new ones that isn't quite exactly the same. So if anyone is listening and was like, what's a bulk file? I'm super interested. If you go here to our playlist on our YouTube channel, you should be able to look at the bulk files 2.0 playlist. There's 11 videos here. We had some old bulk files, but notice there's only 9 videos. So we're actually putting out more videos on bulk files and more tactical videos on bulk files. So if you're looking for info on bulk files, recommend checking out that playlist. That should be really helpful. Good question from Joseph again. Joseph, always here with the awesome questions. I've seen a lot of quality keywords from Helium-10 that show good search volume lifetime, but this year it degraded and vice versa. And I could spot similar keywords that kind of took over those degraded search volume keywords, as they both mean the same thing. Should I try and be on the lookout for those keywords and add them to the campaign? Both keywords match systemically. If you can keep up with it, it is good practice to do that. Actually, one thing that's really interesting that actually affects this is Amazon's suggested search will actually change over time. And oftentimes this can significantly impact the search volume of a particular keyword, which I find very fascinating. The problem with trying to like find all these things and analyze it and adjust for it and move with the changes in the market is that's very, very time consuming, insanely time consuming, right? And that's actually one of the reasons why phrase match, auto campaigns, broad match keywords can be really, really beneficial here, because as the consumer market shifts, because those types of campaigns and keywords are targeting other like additional search terms, you should also be able to see those shifts happening in your search term reports. So I would say, yes, keep up with it where you can. It probably makes sense to do that on your main bestsellers. Pro tip here, watch the Amazon suggested search. That could be really helpful to notice shifts. Or if all of a sudden you have a main keyword that was like, thousands of search volume, all of a sudden drop to 0. Most likely the cause of that is going to be Amazon suggested search. So then you can go look at Amazon specifically, pop open the suggested search, see where that search has migrated to. That could be another helpful workflow for you. And then I would say use broader targeting, because that will also catch those shifts. So if you have really good systems where you're like looking at search terms, identifying ones you don't have as keywords, migrating them into keywords, then you should also be catching a lot of those things, which can be helpful. All right, another great question specific to using KPOC for negations and harvesting. How are you dividing those conversion rate in minimum clicks without click spend criteria? What I currently do is look at the last 3 to 6 months of non-branded data, calculate these numbers. Would love to know your approach. That is a really good question. So I will say we do not automate this. We do use KPOC to make it a lot easier to identify these things, but I'm not a huge fan of automating negative keywords. I'm just not. I realize that that means that this is going to continuously be a manual process, which KPOC infinitely scales. Like it's amazing. So for those of you who don't know, KPOC can go in, and it's a keyword, not a keyword. It is an analytics tool that we use. It has ad management capabilities. One of those is fully automating things, but there also is like a halfway where you can go and look and let the system identify. And so for that reason, what we'll do is we'll actually set the parameters lower, meaning like we could go down to like 10 clicks and no sales, and have like just the conversion rate and impression checks to allow us to see if there's something we can negate. And I would never, ever, ever do that if we were automating the negation. But what happens is when you automate the negatives, you have to be conservative with what you're choosing to like have the system trigger, right? Because you don't want to accidentally get rid of something. Well, the problem is that you'll also have those search terms that creep in there that because you understand the products, you'll recognize, oh, this doesn't make any sense, and I can go ahead and negate that. But because I'm just using automated triggers and those triggers are set so high, I miss out on a bunch of stuff. And then sometimes I'll accidentally negate something that actually does make sense for the brand. So because of that, what we'll do is we'll just set our triggers so it will surface to us much sooner. And then we'll just manually go in and QA that list and then select what we think makes sense to negate. So still using KPOC for that, but we're not necessarily fully automating it just because long term we've seen negative ramifications of that. And it's not anything against KPOC. It's just ramifications of having negatives as an automated system. It's just something that we haven't seen work well over time. And so that's what we do about that. Awesome. Cool. Well, I mean, this is, again, use the chat to ask your Amazon advertising questions. Getting a lot of questions this week on search query performance reports, and other great, a lot of people asking about how in the world do you look at what are your competitors doing? So I plug this one pretty often, but I'll plug it again because I think it's valuable to a lot of sellers. If you weren't aware, there's ways to spy on your competitors' conversion rates. So I actually put out a video on this for gauge changing tools to analyze competitor conversion rates. So this is using brand metrics and search query performance. I had a conversation with a seller today who was asking about like, hey, how do I calculate the conversion rate of my competitors, or how do I see how I'm stacking up against them? Search query performance reports, game changer here. But there's a little bit of confusion around how you actually look at conversion rates, because search query performance doesn't actually give you the conversion rates. And so what you actually want to do is you got to calculate this for yourself. And how you calculate it is they give you the totals. So what you do is you say, okay, this is the total number of clicks on this search query. This is the total number of purchases on this search query. So as we know, orders divided by clicks, purchases divided by clicks, that gives us conversion rate. You can also calculate the click-through rate on average for that shopper search query. Again, that's going to be your total clicks divided by the total impressions. So then you have the averages of all the products on those search queries. And then you could take a look at what your ASIN or brand is doing on those search queries. And that allows you to say, hey, how am I stacking up against my competitors here? Which specific search queries do I have a distinct advantage of? And how can I capitalize on that through the advertising? Meaning, how can I push my ads to be able to rank better on those specific products? So that would be how you would use that workflow, which actually for one of our first questions on, how do I get a product to start moving in a launch phase, you might find that, again, I don't know if you're brand registered, so you would have to be brand registered here. The other thing is that, you would actually have to have enough data to have something appear in the search query performance reports. So there is that. But providing that you have all of that information, you will be able to glean some really good insights inside of the search or search query performance reports. Awesome. Other questions. So I'm just rattling off questions that I've come across this week that I think would be valuable to sellers. A lot of questions these days surrounding competition and cost of ranking, and how does one go about that without losing their shirt? How does one, is it better to have your bids lower and then just run out of budget? Or have an enormous budget? Should you put a high bid and then just restrict things with the budget? That was a question that came up this week, which I think was a really good one, because unfortunately, cost of ranking these days is getting super competitive, let's be honest. And just because cost per clicks are going up. And so with this question, typically what we find is if your goal is ranking, it's best to have higher bids and then simply cap the amount of spend with the budget, is what we found to be the most effective when it comes to limiting how much budget is going to a ranking keyword and then still being able to rank. That strategy has been working really, really well for us. Cool. So it looks like we have couple more minutes. I know we might end this early depending on how many questions. Some Thursdays are lazy Thursdays, and some Thursdays we are rickrolling in the chat. So today seems like a lazy Thursday. Got a good 30 plus minutes of questions rolling in, which is awesome. Super appreciate everybody who showed up. Super appreciate everybody who asked. So I'll wait around for another couple minutes. You guys can listen to me yammer on about Amazon advertising, what I'm seeing in the space, the specific struggles that I'm seeing right now. And then if we don't get any more questions in the chat, I'll probably end up closing us out. But yeah, I would say definitely biggest struggles right now is the increase in the competition, meaning the increase in the cost per clicks is definitely been a struggle these days for sellers. So navigating that has really proved to be tricky, I would say. It's not that you can't navigate that. I mean, we definitely are navigating it, and we've been able to get some insane results when it comes to improving total ACoS in accounts where, even in supplements, like we're getting some insane results in supplements or like really competitive pet categories or other things. But you gotta know what you're doing and how to navigate that. So what we have developed here is what we call it is like we run very aggressive, very quick micro tests in these categories that are super competitive. What I mean by that is in categories where cost per clicks are insane, the cost of testing is really, really high, and the potential to lose a lot of money right out of the gate is insanely high. So what do we do here? We actually identify specific keywords that we want to test. We will test them aggressively. And as soon as we have the data feedback to determine if that is a good test or not, we will take action, meaning we'll either pause it, lower it, adjust it. If it's working, great, we'll push it up. And then we go on to our next batch of keywords. What we found is that this is insanely valuable and allows us to test things without having an immense ad budget right out of the gate. We essentially take those ad dollars and then just keep shifting that test budget as soon as we have the data. There's some people I've, talked with in chats or in groups, and they're like, oh yeah, we need to wait a week. We need to wait 2 weeks before we can do anything and before we can make any adjustments. That's not true. It's not a time frame, it's a number of clicks that you're looking for. So as soon as you can get feedback on those particular number of clicks, why would I wait 5 additional days to take action on that, right? I mean, yes, there is the sales attribution windows, and you do want to be careful and cognizant of that. But if I have 3 days worth of data and I have 100 clicks of data, you would think that I could take action. Like, I have enough information to be able to take action. So these days, with things being as competitive as they are, it's important to take action as soon as possible. That's a good question. Hi, are you using SaaS automation layers such as M19 or Helium-10 to harvest keywords? We do use Helium-10 for keyword research. We also use Smart Scout more for market analysis. That one's been really good. I know Data Dive is really good. There's other really good keyword research tools out there. Now, as far as automation, not full automation. Our agency is pretty hands-on with what we do. The reason being is because the results that we're getting is due to how intently we analyze and we adjust in accounts and how fast we move, making even just micro adjustments to things. I hesitate to say you can't get you couldn't manage similarly to the way that we're managing, but like the level of attention to detail that we pride ourselves on is just not there with full automation. Now, don't get me wrong. We have systems, we have processes, we do have some automated processes that allow us to get to the answers quicker. I think that's where software becomes a real game changer, is how quickly can you condense the things that you have to look at to make that evaluation. But I will say, and I have some really amazing friends who are in the software space and are doing some really, really great things with automations and AI, and I love them. I think they're doing some really cool stuff. It's just the way, the level of quality and attention to detail, if you're fully automating something, is just not going to be there. Now, in the future, will that change with the advancements in AI and all of the additional data points coming out? I hope so, honestly, because it would make my life a heck of a lot easier. But yeah, I would say we are not fully automating it, but we are leveraging it, leveraging those solutions to help not M19, but Helium-10. And again, harvesting keywords and retargeting them as, or harvesting search terms and retargeting them as keywords is a crucial workflow. But if you're not analyzing what you're doing, how, like what keywords make it through your filter, how relevant are they, which products do they align to, if you don't have all these other filters that you're using, it's not just conversions and ACoS and orders. There's a lot more that goes into that analysis. You can automate it and get maybe halfway there. But if you want to get to that next level of making sure that you're adjusting based on what that individual account needs, given its individual goals as a brand and business, you need to add in a lot more quality checks than just a fully automated system. Good question. What's your take on bid management considering revenue per sessions model for total ACoS management? Same as revenue per click for ACoS, but how do you see this revenue per session in this scenario? I wouldn't see it. I wouldn't use it. The reason why is because you cannot correlate the actual sales that are happening on a per individual keyword level to any level of confidence in the data that would allow me to say this is the total ACoS for this individual search. Now you can get total ACoS at an individual product level, and then you can roll that up to what does my ad structure look like. And there are ways that you can correlate total ACoS to ad strategies on a per product level. but you're never going to be able to get down to an individual keyword level. And I know there's search query performance data, but you cannot correlate that data. Amazon has intentionally made it very ambiguous. Why? Because if we were able to calculate the exact amount of traffic coming through on specific search terms, there is a world in which people who would be much smarter than me could reverse engineer and identify exactly the amount of total traffic that the Amazon platform is getting. It is not within Amazon's best interest to ever release that information or ever create or release some sort of data that would allow people to calculate something like that. It's just not. And so for that reason, we're not going to ever get, this is how many sales, this is the sales, this is the traffic specifically that is happening on an individual shopper search level. And so for that revenue per session, you can't calculate sessions. You can't correlate that to an individual search. Now I know, again, shopper search query, right? That doesn't contain all of the search. Like it's not going to be a one-to-one. If you look at the orders that are coming through search query performance, and then you look at those versus what Amazon's telling you your orders are making on that exact same search query in your ads, it doesn't correlate. Ads show more. There's a distinct reason for that. The data sets aren't one-to-one, so you can't do that. Now, if you want my take on bid management, I don't give you specific formulas, but if you want to get an idea of exactly how we think through bid adjustments, this is actually an internal training that I put together for my team. So how do we adjust bids? Internal training. It basically gives you an overview of what our bid adjustment strategy looks like. And you can probably take that and sort of cobble it together and reverse engineer it if you feel like it. So I'll drop that in the chat. What are the best strategies to grow the new launch? Two things. Drive a heck ton of orders and make sure that you have great conversion rates on those orders. So that would be how you grow it. Now, the caveat to this is typically this is not the full question. Brands want to know not just how do we grow it, how do we grow it profitably is normally what makes all of these questions very, very difficult. Like the first question someone said is like, hey, I'm not getting impressions. It's a new product launch. I'm struggling here. And then it was followed up with, I can't afford the $3 cost per clicks. Because my answer to the first question, you want impressions up the bit, right? You want to grow a product, go ham with the main keywords. Make sure you're getting top of search, right? But not everybody can afford that. Not everybody wants to pay that particular cost, both in loss of profits and ad budgets. So what do? You find the segment of the market where your product fits the best, that fits within your ad budget. Also, other pro tips here, I would focus on sponsored product ads. Exact match works really well, not necessarily from a performance standpoint, because that's been pointed out. Broad match, phrase match, they get better, better ACoS. That's not wrong. But if you want to say, I want to aggressively go after this specific search, that is the distinct advantage of exact match. And so I would focus in on that. And sponsored product ads tends to have, we've observed that it has the biggest impact on your rankings. So I would focus in mostly on sponsored product ads. Other pro tips here is if your goal is impressions, fixed bids can get you the most impressions. So you can focus on that. Alan, what are your thoughts on Amazon campaign diagnostic tools to optimize advertising? I love me a diagnostic tool. Not sure which ones specifically you are referring to. All right, got more questions on managing ACoS. All right, I'm gonna pull up a tool for you. All right, we'll get to that one in a second. But diagnostic tools, I like them. Some of the best diagnostic tools that I've personally built are built off of using business reports and bulk files. I like those because bulk files gives you your entire ad account data, and then business reports gives you your total account data, and you can simply marry the two. If you have any specific tools you're asking about or like a specific analysis you want me to kind of touch on when I'm talking about like let me know. I'm more than happy to jam out. It's kind of more of a broad question, so I don't know if I'll have any specific answers to that. All right, here's your question. How do you manage ACoS, especially if the margins are very much low and the product is low ticket? Great question. The answer to this is not an easy fix. I'll tell you why. All right, let's go over this. So this is understanding a forward cost model. This is actually illustrates why these are very, very difficult. Your ACoS is a function of 3 things. One of them is what you mainly control with ads. The second one you can kind of control a little bit. So I'm going to go out the numbers behind the numbers, and then I'm going to talk about maybe how you can go about fixing those numbers. Okay. So your ACoS is determined by what is your average cost per click, which is something you already know. Your average conversion rate. Average conversion rate tells you how many clicks on average does it take to generate an order. How much am I paying for every one of those clicks? And when I do convert, which is average order value, which is a little bit different than sale price, but you can pretty much put in sale price here. How much do I make when I convert? So if I had a $10 product with only a 5% conversion rate and a $1 cost per click, my ACoS is going to be 200%, which is probably not what I'm looking for. And so I actually built out this forward cost model so you can input the target ACoS. So it's saying at this average order value, at this average conversion rates, we need to decrease. We can only afford a 15-cent cost per click, which is really rough. And this is the scenario that advertisers are up against right now. So there's a lot of people in the market that'll be like, oh, I want a 5% ACoS. It's like, let's do the math on what it takes to get that 5% ACoS. And then the question then becomes, is there anywhere in the market we can get any impressions for a 15-cent cost per click? If your average is $1, probably not. So there's other things you can do, right? So I told you that there's one thing that you mainly impacted, which is your average cost per click. But the second thing that's impacted is your conversion rate. And you can kind of make this a little bit better. Now, the main thing that will increase your conversion rate is going to be what's going on with the product, right? Is there something we can do with the pricing? Is there any way that we can increase this conversion rate here? Great ways to sort of analyze this and see what's possible is looking at your conversion rate versus what's going on in the market. Because there are some markets where conversion rate is just low. For example, clothing. I don't know if you know this. Clothing is notoriously low conversion rate. It's like a 5% conversion rate in clothing is actually a great conversion rate. I've seen 2% conversion rates and the product still crush it, right? Because that's that category. So it's always great to benchmark yourself against the averages and say, wow, I'm like falling really below, right? Okay, maybe there's something I can do to improve. Hey, I'm actually excelling in my category. So then maybe I need to look elsewhere. But the other way that you can fix your conversion rate is by figuring out which keywords that you're going up against. What keywords can I have better conversion rates on, right? So the thing that you want to figure out, and I'm going to make it seem simple, it's not simple, it's difficult, is what keywords, what search terms, what ad types can I get a higher conversion rate on? And which of those can I also get a lower than average cost per click on? Because that's what you're looking for, is where can I get higher converting, cheaper traffic? Again, how much you can affect this is highly dependent on the market, but if you want how to fix it, that's how you fix it. Not easy, but it is doable. All right. Let's see. All right. I see a couple questions, but I don't understand the question, so I'm gonna skip over it. Maya, if you want to do that, say that a little bit differently. I don't quite understand that question, but all right. How do you operate in high competitive niches with budget constraints towards PPC, low ticket products, less than $15, high competitive and limited budgets? Fun. Okay, I'm going to share. Okay, we do a lot of forecasting around here. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up another forecast tool because I have a lot of sellers asking about these types of things. And so basically what you need to figure out, it's not that you can't operate in these markets. You want to figure out what is possible. Yeah, this is a struggle. I mean, so it's not that you can't operate this in these markets, right? You can get a piece of the pie. But if you have a budget constraint and you have a low ticket product and it's really competitive, which means your conversion rates probably aren't there, it means what is possible given your constraints being budget and competitive market, may or may not be acceptable. Depends. If this is your product, I'm going to speak to you and I'll say, hey, it may not be acceptable. If this is a client account, then you just need to set the tone of what's possible. All right. And to do that, we have, this is a goal-based forecast, but I can use this and kind of work backwards from it. So basically it's saying, okay, how many orders do we want to get? So if it's 10 orders, what's our product price? So in this case, we're looking at, I'm going to say $12 because it's sub 15. Expected cost per click. So say we had a 50-cent cost per click. What's our conversion rate? If it's low, 5%. And then I would say ad sale percentage in the beginning is 100%. To get to that, we need $100 budget, right? So if they say I want 10 orders a day, you're like, great, I have to get $100 a budget. And if they say, well, I can't afford $100, I have $50, I have $20, and you can essentially work backwards. So if you're telling me that you only have $20 to spend, 100, let's see, 100 by 20, so I'm going to get you a fifth of this, which is what? 2 orders, right? It's not that much. So it's really, it's not that you can't play in these markets. With these markets, why it's so hard is because you're like, all right, here's the sandbox we're in, right? This is how much our budget gets us in this market. This is how far we can go. And they go, but I want that. I want all of that. And you say, okay, then you need to give me this much budget. I can't give you that much budget. Okay, then we can have this. This is our piece, right? This is what you told me you can afford. And it's really, honestly, what I find in these cases is it's talking with a brand to understand what is their most important thing. Here is like a conversation I had with a brand, right? We're advertising for this brand. Unfortunately, they came to us from another marketer who had sold them the sun, the moon, and the stars. And it said, you're going to get up to $1.8 million in sales by the end of this year. And they'd forecasted all these numbers and like, it was just a crapshoot. I was looking at the forecast. I'm like, no, like stop trying to sign people by giving them like this amazing thing that you can't deliver on it. Be honest and be upfront is really what you should be doing. And so what we did is we had a conversation, right? Because they've been forecasted all of these sales numbers, right? They're like, oh, we're going to hit the sales. It's going to be amazing. But what happened was they were looking at their available budget and what they've been told that they needed to hit those sales numbers. And they're like, there's a disconnect here. We can't afford this. And so we had a heart-to-heart with them and we're like, hey, look, what do you guys need? Like, what are the problems in the business? Some of the problems in the business is with the funding they had, they only had so much runway. We're like, okay, what does a business need to survive? What do you guys need? Oh, okay, so we need to hit XYZ amount in profits. Okay, so if we have this much runway and we have this much budget and this is what we need for the business to survive and we can grow from here, this is the path that gets us to the thing that you need. So a lot of times I would have a really, again, if this is your brand, I would sit down and I would really understand how much product do I have? How much money do I have invested in my inventory? What do I actually need to accomplish for this product? Is this the only product the brand has? Are there additional products that can support cash flow of a higher budget? What does the lay of the land look like? How much runway do they have? What is their cash flow? What is their profitability metrics off of this? Are they more comfortable running a slower, more profit conscious strategy? Do they need to hit it out of the gate? Right? What are the expectations? What are the goals? You gather all that information, and then that's how you build the ad strategy. Where you get stuck is when someone says, I need the sun and the moon and the stars, figure out a way for me to do that. And you say, I don't know how to do that. And so you get stuck in this loop. To get out of the loop, you need to have a frank discussion on what is it that you actually need for your business. Forget Amazon. What do you need for your business? What is our best path forward to get you the best possible case scenario for you and what you need to do? And that's going to get you. I went on a tangent there, but I've been feeling a lot about this. I've been having a lot of conversations this week around goals, setting goals, how to have ad strategies to work backwards from goals. So not sure if that was helpful, but hopefully it was. All right. Looks like we got a last question. Would you please also elaborate about placements? Thankfully for your wonderful explanation. Additionally, can we get the sheet link? Yes. Let me post the sheet link. Hold on, let me share that with you. I will copy it. I'm going to post it in the chat. Looks like you're on Facebook, so you should also be able to get a link to that sheet. By the way, if you're listening to the replay and you want a copy of any of these sheets or anything, feel free to message me. Okay, so we're talking about placement percentages. Yes, so there's different theories on placement percentages. I'll let you know how that we use them. We use them as a performance increase for what's already working. I am a fan of leaning more on your bids and your bid adjustments than placement percentages to be able to get the visibility that you want. What we've found is that if you do the really low bid, insanely high placement percentages, you don't get as many impressions. And that's a problem if your goal is, say, ranking or you need that visibility. And so in those cases, I would recommend leaning on more of the bids. And then what I would do is I would go and analyze the placements and say, where am I getting my best performance? Where do I get the best ROI? And then from that, you want to say, okay, then let's look at adding some additional placement percentages on here. And I'm a fan of here starting low and working my way up. When I say start low, 5, 10, 20%, right? Maybe you want to go crazy 50% or something. And then just you want to do is adjust the placements, watch the performance. Did that work? Yes or no? And then adjust from there. That's how we do placements. But there's other theories in the market. Some people have these really complicated formulas and things. They're not bad, but what I say, I prefer to lean on the bid. All right. What is the best strategy to go into a high ticket niche where the product price is 150? The average niche is 75. Good question. Great thing to look at here is your product opportunity explorer. And sometimes Search Query Performance, it will actually show you the average price point of like products on that particular search page. So that can be helpful. One, if you're coming in at a higher price point, you better have a listing that showcases why I need to spend that extra $80, right? If I have a bunch of offerings that are $70 and you show me like, hey, I got one over here, this is 150, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Why is this one priced higher? If you can demonstrate to me why it's worth it for me to pay that money, I might pay that money. Two things here. One, there's going to be less people who are going to be okay with spending those additional ad dollars. And then two, you just have to figure out where in the market they're searching. And another pro tip here, because your conversion rates on these types of accounts, we have several accounts where we have higher price items. Like we have electronics, we have like scientific equipment, clothing. There's all kinds of places where the product prices. Your graphs in your account are going to be like this in your ad account. It's going to be like one day you're going to have a 2% ACoS because you converted, and the next day it's going to be 100%. And you're going to be like looking at that, like, how the heck do I optimize this? So here, the pro tip here is you want to look at longer date ranges because you want to smooth out that curve. When I say longer date ranges, if you typically optimize on like a 7-day, go to 14-day. If you typically optimize on a 14-day, go to a 30-day, is what we found to be really, really helpful. Part 2, for the previous explanation, for the low ticket niche, what if your goal is profitability from the start? Then yep, you just have to set expectations on what is achievable given how you have to enter the market, because you're going to have to enter the market on the super long tail keywords. There's not going to be a lot of search. The thing that you give up for not being as aggressive is lower visibility. Lower visibility because you have to pick keywords that have less search volume, or lower visibility because you just can't afford the cost per clicks that you need to be able to get that, say, top of search or something. So it's more about setting expectations than anything and just having a frank discussion on what's possible. All right, our product is well branded and it looks a bit different, but the conversion rate is way lower than market. Yeah, if you have higher price products, it's always going to have a lower conversion rate. The benefit is often that lower conversion rate can be offset because the price is a little bit higher. Going back to the ACoS equation, right? A factor of that is the product price. So you can forward a little bit. Like if you have, say, 20% of your total sales to spend to reach whatever target ACoS you have on a $150 product, that's going to be a lot more ad budget than if you're on a $70 product. So benefit here is you have like a little bit more money to play with sometimes. But oftentimes that's offset by lower conversion rates, which I would expect. So it's really, where can we find the targets that this product does convert on well? And then, again, just looking at where you can get like a decent cost per click. And I would just focus in on that. Cool. Great conversation today. I really appreciate it. Went a couple minutes over, but I really wanted to make sure that we were able to get to those last questions. So first off, I really, really appreciate everyone who joined with some amazing questions today. So if you aren't aware, hi. Maybe you just hopped on this live stream. I hope you found value. I am here every single Thursday, same time, same place, which, by the way, we do this for a living for brands. So if you are a founder-led brand and you are looking to hit the next level, if you want an Amazon ad strategist that is able to take your business goals and translate them into Amazon ad strategies, highly recommend you hit us up, the website, junglr.com, junglr.com. And with that, I appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next one. And that wraps up this episode of the Ask Junglr Amazon Advertising Podcast. I hope you found these insights and strategies helpful in your Amazon PPC journey. Remember, if you have a burning Amazon ad question that you'd like answers to, head over to junglr.com/live to join our next live Q&A session. Until next time, keep optimizing those ads and stay hungry.